Looking ahead, coming up this week is the second annual Oregon Human Trafficking Disruptor Summit. This year, community agencies will teach you how to protect vulnerable populations from human trafficking in Southern Oregon. Tickets are still available for Thursday and Friday's Adult Summit. This year's themes focus on teen prevention, supporting children in the foster care system, and how exploitation happens in person and online.
Trafficking actually happens a lot online, and so our children, our youth, they're much more likely to be approached by a predator or a trafficker on their cell phones than they are by like a white van or somebody coming up and down the I-5 corridor.
Anyone who attends the summit will also get free access for their teen to the workshop on Saturday. It's a day for teens to talk and learn from peers on how to recognize red flags in their lives and in their friends' lives.
Joining us this morning is the founder of Ride My Road and producer of the upcoming Human Trafficking Disruptor Summit, Lauren Trantham. Good morning, Lauren, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, for our viewers that maybe missed the last time you were on here or maybe just need a refresher, can you tell us about the summit that's coming up next weekend?
Yeah, next week, Thursday, Friday, we're hosting the second annual Southern Oregon Human Trafficking Disruptor Summit, where we bring in national and local leaders to teach on different facets of human trafficking to get the community educated.
Very nice. And on Saturday afternoon, there's a special event. It's geared towards more teens and parents called My Friends Are Not for Sale. Can you explain what that means and what that is?
Yes, this is a peer-to-peer initiative under our partners Epic Project, and they have this program, My Friends Are Not for Sale, to teach teens the red flags of grooming, to understand how trafficking happens, how to stay safe, and how to keep your friends safe.
Yeah, because it's important that everyone kind of watch out for one another and watch out for the community. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, with teenagers, there's things they're going to tell their friends that they're not going to tell their parents and teachers. And so that's why it's important that all teens are educated so they can spot the signs within their friend groups.
Right. And you're partnering with groups like Epic Project. What do connections like that mean for the fight against human trafficking?
Epic Project is an organization that we partner with, and I'm actually on staff on that organization as well, and they're men fighting trafficking. And that's really important in the fight against human trafficking because it's really easy to focus all of our attention on traffickers and not buyers, when in reality, human trafficking is a demand-driven issue. And so that's why it's important to get men involved and to get men educated on how that happens and get them enrolled in the fight.
Yeah, and I imagine it's also good to maybe dispel some myths around human trafficking, such as, it only affects one group of people when we know evidence shows that's not true.
Correct.
Yeah. What ultimately do you think people will take away from this event?
They're going to learn the signs, and they're going to learn how to support our local agencies. We have over 20 agencies that will be in attendance tabling, and they're the ones that are working the most with vulnerable populations, the people who are most at risk of being trafficked. And so when we come together as a community to not only learn about trafficking, but to learn how to support our local agencies, it's win-win.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like the topic of human trafficking has been getting a lot more awareness, or maybe being more in the spotlight lately. Do you think that's helping it move in the right direction of actually fighting against it?
Yeah, well, we have some good news and we have some bad news on the front. I'll start with the bad news. With everything that's going on at the federal level, there's a lot of task forces that have been shut down, that have lost federal funding. For example, the National Advisory Committee on the Trafficking of Teens and Youth, they've been directed to halt all operations. And so this is having a trickle-down effect for us in the nonprofit community. And so while that's discouraging and disheartening what we're seeing at the federal level in regards to human trafficking, I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to come together as a community. Because if we can't count on outside help, we have to do it ourselves. And so, like I said, coming to the summit, understanding how to support vulnerable populations, that's like a really good thing that's going to be coming out of this.
Yeah, well said. Well, Lauren, is there anything else that you would like to say before we wrap up?
No, we just hope to see you at the summit. It's a great time to learn how to support the community, and we're going to have lots of activities. We're going to be making jewelry for survivors. We have really fun stuff going on, so we hope to see you there.
That's awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being on our show again.
Thank you.
Of course. Now, the second annual Southern Oregon Human Trafficking Trafficking Disruptor Summit is coming next weekend to the Ashland Springs Hotel, and Epic Project presents My Friends Are Not for Sale, an anti-human trafficking class for teens and parents on Saturday, May 10th at the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library on Ashland Street in Ashland. Admission to My Friends Are Not for Sale is free with your Disruptor Summit ticket, or just $10 by itself. For more information, head to anpconference.com. Once again, Lauren, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining us this morning is Lauren Trantham, founder and executive director of Ride My Road. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning, Natalie.
Now, for those that aren't familiar with your project, how would you describe what Ride My Road is?
We're a local anti-human trafficking nonprofit. We've got founded in 2016, and we've been working to raise funds for survivor-led initiatives, take photographs of survivors for professional development, and most recently host a conference series to educate the community on what human trafficking looks like in our area.
Yeah, and speaking of, coming up in May, you have that second annual Human Trafficking Disruptor Summit. How would you describe what that is?
There's two objectives to the summit. The first one is, like I mentioned, to educate the community on what trafficking looks like. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like what Hollywood would portray. It's not usually kidnapped kids. It happens in different various ways. And so we want to make sure that the community knows what signs to look for. That's our first objective. So we invite all community members to attend the summit.
Yeah, it seems like there are maybe a lot of misconceptions in the popular imagination about what human trafficking can look like. So it sounds like that's what the purpose of this is to kind of educate people about what it actually looks like.
Exactly. And the second objective is to celebrate our local agencies. So we have a lot of agencies that are doing amazing, incredible work in the Valley. They're not necessarily anti-human trafficking agencies, but what we want people to understand is that when we support our vulnerable populations, that is trafficking prevention.
Yeah.
So these local agencies are our heroes. They're the ones that are keeping our vulnerable population safe. And so the second objective of the summit is to celebrate them.
And there's still an opportunity for local businesses to get involved. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, when we invite these agencies to the summit, they'll be able to table, but we also want them to bring their staff. And so we're asking local businesses to get involved right now to adopt a team to power the summit, and we can make sure that while they may not be trafficking organizations, they know what trafficking looks like and they know how to provide those services to victims. And so we're asking local businesses to jump on board in sort of a basketball-themed bracket style, sponsor a team, adopt a team, and make sure that these agencies can come free of charge.
Human trafficking, it's a problem that a lot of people are aware of course, but a lot of people feel like maybe they can't really do anything to solve it. What would you say is one thing people can do every day to help?
I think really education is the key, and that's why we host the summit. But while we're here today, I'll let you know a couple of things people should understand about human trafficking. I already mentioned that it's not necessarily kidnappings. That's probably less than 2 to 3% of trafficking victims in the United States are kidnapped. Instead, they're sort of coerced or groomed into what we call the commercial sex industry. And so it's important to understand what grooming tactics traffickers are using. And the other thing to consider when we think about human trafficking in this country is the demand side. We talk a lot about victims, we talk a lot about traffickers, but we don't often hear much about the buyers. And so understanding who are the people in the community that are actually purchasing people, and how can we combat that?
It sounds like education is one of the best ways to prevent scenarios like this happening.
Absolutely. We used to do a ton of awareness events at Ride My Road, and I started to realize that while people come and they want to support the cause, they weren't really understanding how it happens, which is why we shifted from awareness to actual education, because as a community, we have the power to come together to make a real impact. And unfortunately, human trafficking does happen in the Rogue Valley. We've had labor trafficking incidences, massage parlor busts, sex trafficking, of course, and so it's easy to think it doesn't happen here, but in fact it does.
Lauren, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up today?
Well, we want to thank our sponsors. We already have some sponsors on board, and while we're here looking for more, we're looking for more partnerships with the business community. We want to thank our sponsors, ANP Conference, Harry and David, United Way, Ashland Insurance, and Rogue Valley Financial.
Well, Lauren, thank you so much for being on Sunrise this morning.
Thanks for having me.
course. Now, coming this May, Ride My Road presents the second annual Southern Oregon Human Trafficking Disruptor Summit. They'll be focusing on topics such as sex trafficking, familial trafficking, online exploitation, demand reduction, and more. You can save $50 by purchasing your early bird ticket for the two-day event right now for $85. That includes lunch and parking both days. For more information about the summit and to reserve your spot, visit anpconference.com. And for more information about Ride My Road, visit ridemyroad.org. Once again, Lauren, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.